All right. Okay, we are live, Rahul. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Ping. I'm the host of Ping Talk series. Okay, tonight I'm very happy to have Rahul, my long term friend. That I've known him for quite a while, and he's today he's here to share with us with regards to communication or how you actually communicate better, right? So Rahul is actually a communication trainer, speaker, consultant with more than 18 years of experience, and he has been working with like a MNC, SME, government organization, academic institution, and VWOs around the region, right? Okay, so he also basically he utilized storytelling to help his clients and participants to enhance their communications and the ability to influence and persuade, right? So I know that like this communication thing is really a super important thing, and I know Rahul for so long, and he has always been like the MC for the activities that we are in, kind of stuff. And then now he's doing full time on this. So Rahul, thanks a lot again for coming on to my show tonight.
Pleasure to be
Okay.
here. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
having
yeah,
me. I
yeah.
think it's an absolute joy to be invited to be a part of this.
All right. Okay. So Rahul, I guess like I mean having seen you like being a good communicator, being MC kind of stuff, and then for you to decide to move into this path of being a full-time communication trainer and speakers and consultant wise, can you share with us about like what about your this journey, about coming on as this communication trainer and coach kind of thing? Yeah.
That's a very interesting question. Thing it brings me back a long, long time ago. I think the story really, really finds itself way before, right? A long time back. I truly believe that a lot of times what we end up sharing with the world and what we end up teaching, if you're a coach, you're a trainer, or you're a consultant, stems from a personal need. And that's something I truly believe in. I've seen a lot of coaches, like I've seen relationship coaches who basically went to relationship coaching because they went through a journey of having to heal their own relationships or manage their own
Uh,
relationships. I've seen life coaches who went to life coaching because they went through the journey of figuring out
mm,
their own life decisions and choices. And then as they went on that journey, they learn things and they find that I've learned so much. Now it's time for me to share with other people. So I
yeah,
think for
yeah, yeah.
myself, there's also the same thing, right? That
Mm,
I used to be a very, and I still am in many ways, an introverted, shy boy who did not ever feel confident in primary school to speak up in front of people.
uh,
And then
doesn't seems to me that case.
yeah, I know a lot of people have a hard time believing
Right.
that looking at me in public right now, right? But that's always, I was that person in primary school. I was very timid, very shy, very introverted. I went to secondary school. I continued to be that for the first 2 years. And I joined the student council and I joined my drama and debate society. A lot of CCAs that was quite contradictory to my personality, right? But I guess
Mm,
what drew me to these CCAs was also that maybe the underlying desire to overcome this obstacle or this personal barrier that I had, that inability to speak up, the inability to connect with people. And so
mm,
maybe I was looking at something within the CCAs that may help me. And I was fortunate enough to find good teachers, my discipline master, my literature teacher, my English teachers, who
mm,
pushed me, really, really pushed me. In fact, threw me into the deep end of the pool where, I was given exposure, experience, trainings, guidance, mentorship to
mm,
open up, to become a better speaker. So that was my first learning experience with public speaking, with
mm,
facing a large audience, facing the crowd. And that journey continued as I continued my academic education. I went into mass communications. I went to different jobs that required me to do sales roles, marketing roles, a lot of customer client centric roles that required me to talk, present,
mm,
share
mm,
ideas. And as I went through that journey, I guess I sharpened those skill sets. And there was a point where I took these experiences, took this knowledge that I acquired, this new skill set that I've acquired, and I decided to bring it to organizations as a consultant to help them and their people communicate their messages better. And being a mass
mm,
comm grad, that was the most natural thing to do. I wanted to go into communications consulting, helping people
mm,
with their marketing, advertising, PR, and all that. So I started off as a consultant actually, but as my journey as a consultant progressed, uh, I just came back one round where where I had clients who tell me, why don't you do some knowledge transfer work for our people? Instead of just being a consultant, why don't you train my in-house team how to communicate better as well? So those opportunities came, and I realized that there was a lot of gratification, there's a lot of fulfillment, there's a lot of satisfaction in seeing seeing your participants, seeing your clients grow, evolve, progress the same way that you did many years ago from such sharing. So that's how I got into communications training, and
All right.
I've been the biggest beneficiary of doing this, because
Yeah,
every day
yeah.
I so
I guess seeing the improvement of others, in that aspects really kind of like a real make you think about like what happens in the past for yourself, right? Yeah.
yeah. And every time I go into a classroom, I learn something new, right? I'm reminded of my own learnings. I validate my own concepts. I get to practice, but for myself, I get a lot of stage time, so I do practice a lot on my own
Mm,
speaking skills, storytelling skills, communication skills. So
mm,
it just helps me to sharpen and sharpen and sharpen the skill set that I have, and it has been an ever continuous learning journey up to this point, but
mm,
it's also satisfying and
mm.
fulfilling.
So I think Rahul, I think based on like I mean with 18 years of experience that you have, I mean is really a long time, as a trainer, as communication. So based on all these whiles that you have learned, and also all the students that you have come across, I mean, in terms of the way you approach on, of course I will ask you later on with regards to the storytelling, but I guess it's like from the approach on improving the communication wise, do you kind of like have a series of like a certain what you call that, like uh guidelines, or things that you have as your own Rahul, kind of things to improve on this communication stuff? Yeah.
So I think all communication boils down to three things for me.
Mm,
I truly believe that at the end of the day, if I can crystallize all of this into three compartments or three segments
mm,
that that we need to work on, right? Then I would say the first part is the confidence part, right? Which is about feeling confident internally, and also to make sure that we are projecting confidence as well. Both are very important, right? And one is really the extension of the other. So we must first be very confident about what we have to say. We must believe with conviction that you have something important to value add to say, and you must have that sense of uh, belief that whatever it is that you want to share is something that you are passionate about or you are convinced about. That's very important. And then the other part is a projection part. How do I project the confidence outwardly, right? So that ability of making sure that you maintain composure, you manage your own anxieties, you manage your own nervousness, and there are
mm,
techniques for that, right? So this is the first part, the confidence part. The second part, I think, is the clarity part. uh, I can be very confident about my message. I can be extremely confident in my projection.
mm,
However, if I keep rambling, if I keep going in circles, if I don't have a clear roadmap, I don't have a clear structure in terms of how I want to convey what I want to share across to my audiences, then it just becomes one chunk of content mess that does not really make any sense to the
so you
receiver.
couldn't get the message across very properly in a sense.
So you can't get a message across, or the
Mm,
recipient has difficulty in untangling your message to make some sense out of it, right? So that
mm,
clarity is very important. That clarity of what's your key message, what are the core components of it, and what's the roadmap leading up to that message. So the clarity is absolutely essential in communication. The clearer you are in your messaging, in your key ideas, your core ideas, in your
mm,
articulation, in your journey towards that, I think it becomes easier for your audiences, for your stakeholders to be able to resonate, to be able to relate, and to be able to internalize a lot of it and respond to you the way you want them to respond to you.
mm,
And the
okay.
last part is really about credibility. So I can be confident, I can be clear, but I must also be able to, through what I'm communicating, be able to win people's trust. And for that,
Mm,
credibility becomes absolutely important. So credibility is a lot of times linked to a few factors, right? It
mm,
starts off with likability. I think that's a very important part of credibility. People don't even
Mm.
like you as a person, then it becomes very difficult for them to trust you, right? So I think
True,
from
true, true.
likability to reliability to consistency, all of that comes together. Accuracy, all of that comes together to create credibility. So these three C's, I think, are the fundamental pillars, the foundational pillars to communication, right? So it's going to be your confidence, your clarity, and your credibility, right? If you get these three things as a starting point, I think we are off to a great start. But that alone is so much to learn and
Yeah,
uncover.
yeah, yeah. But that's why I wanted to come back to this question with regards to like because the first point that you were saying like I mean confidence will have to come there right before that. But what if let's say you come across someone that doesn't even have that confidence themselves. Don't talk about like whether they are he's clear or but if someone who is doesn't have that confidence at all when especially like on the stage wise, then how do you really tackle that in their aspects then?
And it's quite common, right? Because if you look at statistics, 7 out of 10 people suffer from this thing called glossophobia, which is a fear of public speaking. It's
Yeah.
it's it's Some studies link it to being the number one fear in the world, number one
in
phobia
the
in the world. Right, number one, public speaking. Number two, death. Number three, cockroaches. Right, so
yeah.
what it basically means is if you're at somebody's funeral, you'd rather be in the coffin than be giving the eulogy. Right, that's what it technically is trying to
Yeah,
say.
okay,
Uh,
okay, I
but
heard
also
I
more,
heard about that.
you heard about that, right? So it's not so morbid, lah. But what I want to say is
Mm,
that I think the confidence part is a lot of introspection. I think it's that what we do in class usually is we bring people through a certain set of exercises, whether it's in class or whether it's through coaching. We bring them to a
mm,
set of exercises where we number one try to identify what that internal thought or conversation is. Um, uh, I think at the root, it's very simple. It's a lot of uncertainty. One
mm,
of the greatest contributors to any fear of anxiety is going to be uncertainty. So but what kind of uncertainty? Uncertainty about what? So it could be uncertainty about judgment. It could be uncertainty about outcome. It could be uncertainty about uh, performance indicators. It could be uncertainty about comparisons with other people, benchmarks. So there's certain
mm,
uncertainties, that we are not that drive this anxiety, drives this
mm,
anxiety, nervousness or fear. So first and foremost, you want to identify what that internal thought is or what the source of that is. And once we identify that source of that, then we want to work through how to reframe that. So the techniques on reframing, and I think one of the biggest inspirations I draw from is a guy known as the father of modern positive psychology, Martin Seligman. So he has got this book called Learned Optimism, and he has got this beautiful component on reframing in
mm,
that book, that really teaches us how to reframe our negative thoughts or negative emotions into something a bit more optimistic, something a bit more positive,
mm,
without actually neglecting the negative thought, which is a very important part. I think what a lot of people try to do is they
mm,
try to dismiss, they try to suppress, or decide to bury that negative thought, which is the last thing you want to do.
mm,
So Martin Seligman says something very useful. He says that optimism or learned optimism is not about dismissing the negative thought. You want to acknowledge that negative thought. You want to understand that negative thought is there for a reason. It's a foresight. It's a preemptive defense mechanism of our mind. It's telling you that something could go wrong. And usually when the
mm,
mind is telling us that something could go wrong, there's a basis for that. Either because we're not prepared enough, we have not planned enough, we are not ready enough, we have not done our practice enough, we have not rehearsed enough, we have not familiarized ourselves with something enough. There's a reason for that. And our mind is picking up on that, feeling
mm,
unprepared, and it's manifesting it into a fear or an anxiety or a negative thought. So you want to recognize it, you want to respect that negative thought, but we do not want to be stuck with that negative thought. We want to build on the negative thought and we want to work on it to a point that we can now reframe it to become something more positive. So we want to be more action oriented,
mm,
learning oriented, solutions oriented. So we want to shift the attention and the focus away from it while acknowledging it. So
mm,
I think it's a great balance. And I think so. The next is really the reframing part. And after we do the reframing part, we help participants and clients come up with certain routines, certain rituals that they can inculcate into personal habits
mm,
while preparing for pre-presentations or pre-engagements and during the engagements itself, so that they have got these very solid anchors to help them manage those anxieties and those fears. We don't necessarily overcome them, because sometimes these anxieties are not entirely uh, something that you want to do without, because there's something called positive anxiety as well, that may sometimes pushes us into action or do certain things. But we want to make sure that we are doing enough to manage them so that they don't overwhelm us, they don't paralyze us, they do not have a detrimental effect on us and our communication. So I think in a nutshell, that's basically the process that we go through to help people to overcome that anxiety component.
Actually, it's quite interesting sharing that you have. I must say, I mean, it's we always say about like trying to suppress the negativity, but what you mentioned is really about building the positivity, yes, but at the same time, uh, acknowledging the negativity portion of it and build on it, and be stronger in that basis. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's very important to connect back. It's in our voice. Ultimately, the negative thought is also our thought, and we need to take ownership of that, and we need to respect the fact that it stems from something. There's an indicator, is a manifestation of something else. There's a gap, and if we know what the gap is, then we can then approach to bridge that gap. We can do something to overcome that gap, right?
Okay, I think that one is really a good share that you have put it across. But I guess saying is easy, but I guess doing it is not that easy.
Yeah. So
So I guess to
it's pretty much a guided process, and there are a lot of
mm,
exercises to bring people through it. Uh, but I think one of the easiest things that one can focus on is to make a conscious effort to first start acknowledging what the negative thought is and putting it down on paper, so it becomes tangible. It becomes con- contained to that piece of paper, right? If something is in our mind alone, it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. I guess it became
mm,
bigger and bigger. So a very important part of the exercise is to actually acknowledge, identify it when it comes, acknowledge it, and write it down, so that you know that that thought is limited to
mm,
that piece of paper, and then work out how you want to address it, how you want to approach it. So it's a very conscious exercise. So usually participants or coaches that we work with, we actually kind of have a system to get them to every now and then, whenever the thought appears, acknowledge it. Whenever the thought appears, acknowledge it. So over a period of time, it becomes second nature, it becomes a habit, right? It's about
mm,
forming new habits, really. And sometimes the way we think is also a product of habit. Some of us have just become used to thinking of things in a certain way, right? Or have
true,
acknowledging a
true.
certain thought in a certain way. And we get stuck in that cycle, right? We just can't break out of
Mm,
it. So with the help of such workshops or such coaching sessions, we want to
mm,
bring them out of that cycle and create
mm,
new, healthier, more positive habits. And that's what the
mm.
idea is.
So I think Rahul, you conduct like all these. I guess you do so much of a corporate session on this communication wise. I guess for one session wise, I mean you it's probably like I mean you probably touch probably on the surface of a lot of what you have known. Why so usually like for someone who really wants to improve on their communication wise, uh, do you still conduct like a individual one-to-one kind of stuff, or it's like you do in a small group? And usually, how long does a session for your classes takes? Yeah.
Right. So corporate workshops are usually anywhere between a 3 hours, a 2 hour keynote to a 2 day session. So you can really vary in terms of the needs, the
Mm,
constraints, the budget, uh, you know, the ask of the client. So for corporate, it's quite varied. Then we have the extension of that, where sometimes after the workshops, the companies will also engage us to continue providing smaller group coaching sessions or one-to-one coaching sessions to the participants
mm,
over a period of time. So that also happens. Usually, each coaching session is about 90 minutes to 2 hours max, because it's usually quite intense. We drill
mm,
deep, so we do not want that to be too long either. So 90 minutes to about 2 hours is just nice for us to get in. And then there is the individual coaching sessions that are outside of the companies, people who are not sponsored by company and they want help. Then there are coaching sessions for them, and that usually happens same 90 minutes to 2 hours over a series of sessions. So depending on how where they are,
mm,
what the baseline is, where their goals are, we'll work out anywhere between 3 to 8 sessions, kind of a package for them. Um,
mm.
So this is how we ensure that there is accountability, there are regular check-ins, when we're progressing along with the tools, techniques, frameworks that have been shared with them. In the workshops itself, we can do actual exercises. So what we try to achieve in the workshop is we have enough breadth and depth of coverage to ensure that the frameworks that we are sharing with them, they get a chance to apply it, practice it,
Mm.
and feel comfortable and confident enough to use them beyond the workshop. So that's what we try to achieve as far as the trainings are concerned. Of course, beyond that is then personal discipline, right? So it's a matter of how they
Yeah,
go
yeah.
about continuing. A lot of
I
times we
guess.
get back into work and then that's that. So that's
Yeah,
also the
yeah.
other part of it.
You know, actually, no, no. Actually, to me, it's like this communication. To me, I feel that it's just like a learning a new language, right? I mean, it's like you know what are the things that you're supposed to do, but if you don't practice it, after a while, you kind of like forget it as well, right? Or
Yeah.
just didn't improve kind of thing. Yeah. Okay.
Correct. So there's different levels of personal accountability. Different participants, are
Mm,
quite different. There's some who are very into personal development, professional development, learning, and they with great amount of discipline. Whatever you teach them, you can tell that when we do the post workshop follow ups, 1 month later, 3 months later, you know that
mm,
they've been applying, they've been practicing. There's some supervisors, managers, reporting officers who also hold their people accountable. I sent you for this training. Now you come back, you better be applying it. I want to see you
mm,
applying it. So in those environments where these are positive environments, we tend to see uh, people applying and practicing their learnings a lot better and
mm,
benefiting from it a lot better. And there are those that come in for the workshop, they are quiet. It gets ingrained into the subconscious system because you have done some activities, you have done some exercises, so you have gone through the experience of it. So it's there somewhere lingering. And when the
mm,
need arises, subconsciously they end up going back to what they have learned.
mm.
But they may not even be aware that they're doing it. And then there's a third group of participants who basically, whatever you have shared with them, they return it back to you at the end of the workshop and then they go out of class. So I would say
Yeah.
that every participant is
Okay.
different.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no universal gauge of applying that. But I think that's the beauty of human beings. Everyone has their own
Yeah.
personas
True.
and the way that they
So
learn and receive.
So Rahul, I think okay, I think I like the part that you mentioned about the confidence portion, okay, about acknowledging. Then okay, I think the second C, which is actually clear. I guess that one is really about like how they project their voice or kind of stuff, right? But I particularly wanted to ask on the credibility portion of it, which is actually the last C that you mentioned. So yeah, I can you explain a bit more like with regards to like when you talk about that credibility about portraying your message wise, how does your workshop or rather can you elaborate a little bit more on this credibility portion of it, and also like how do you improve on that portion?
Sure. So I just cover the clarity bit just very quickly. So clarity,
Okay.
besides of course the voice projection and the
Mm,
pronunciation, there's also a very important part which is a structure part of it. Right. So it's about
mm,
how do we structure our communications. It's very important for us to have a specific roadmap in terms of structuring our message so that it's
mm,
received by the stakeholder in a very easy to receive, a very easy to understand, a very easy to internalize kind of a format, right? So today, I think if you ask me for directions from one part of Singapore to the airport, for example, I could tell you directions very randomly all over the place, right? I'll say that okay, first you need to head to the bus stop. But before you go to the bus stop, I need you to take the elevator down, and then I need you to cross over the road from the traffic light, and then go to the bus stop. And then once you're at the bus stop, I need you to take bus number XYZ, and then I
mm,
need you to get off at a certain stop. So I can go on this whole rant, and at the end of it, you may remember nothing at all, right? Uh,
mm,
or I could structure it properly and say, hey, let's have a starting point, right? The starting point is nearest to your house is this particular bus stop, right? I need
mm,
you to make your way to the particular bus stop. Now, once you're at the bus stop, the next step you're going to do is you're going to wait for this bus number XYZ, and you're going to get onto that bus. Once you're on
mm,
the bus, you're going to count exactly 15 stops with the first bus stop included, the one that you got off included, the 15th bus stop is where you're going to get off. And that bus
Mm.
stop is going to be the airport bus stop. So if I'm going to break it down to you into a very well structured, a very well formatted way, it's easier for you to remember. It's easier for you to follow those steps. It's easier for you to respond to those commands the way I want you to as well. So the structure
Mm.
part becomes very important when you talk about clarity. Now, the third part that you asked about was the credibility part of it.
Mm.
So, in terms of the credibility part, what do we need to do, or what do we need to look out for? I think credibility boils down to trust, very importantly. Yeah,
Mm.
and there are many reasons why there's usually a trust deficit um, between stakeholders, or among stakeholders. The number
Mm.
one reason a lot of times that there's a trust deficit is because of a lack of connection to mutual purpose. As a communicator, as somebody who is conveying a message, as a sender of the message, I need to first and foremost have demonstrate that I understand my audience and their needs. That's a very important part. I need to connect with that, right? So, eh,
But you
if
meant even when you are a stranger to the audience, right?
even when you're a
Yes.
stranger to the audience, right? I cannot effectively earn your trust until I first do not demonstrate an interest and to some extent an understanding or relatability to you, what your
Mm.
needs are, what your concerns are, what your interests are. I need to connect with you at least one of these three areas: your needs, your concerns, or your interests. Until I don't connect with you at that level, you're not going to have any reason to trust me, because then you and I are completely different people. We're on completely different pages. We do not have any shared purpose at all. So it becomes very difficult for you to trust me if there's none of there has to be some commonality. What's the common ground that we are connecting on? Right?
Mm.
Some people don't like that measure of needs, concerns, and interests because they find it to be too transactional. So they say, "Well, that's very superficial, right?" So what about a deeper connection? So then there are other metrics for that. Then I can connect with you on the level of pain, pleasure, or values. Right? We call it the PPV. So either I share some pain points with you, I share some pleasure points with you. Our this is hobbies, interests, preferences, whatever, right? And also at the values level, you are a father, I'm a father. We may connect on parenting, for example, or
Mm. Mm.
it could be with our shared interest in personal development and learning, for example, right? You are a
Mm.
keen learner from people. I love to learn from people. That could be something that connects us. So there has to be something that connects. It could be volunteerism, it could be community service, it could be something else, right? But there has to be that factor that bonds people together on a
Mm.
mutual purpose, and that is the initial step to building trust, right? At a deeper level, because the initial trust comes from just likability. You know what? You look like a approachable person. You look like a nice person.
Mm.
I feel comfortable enough to speak to you. That's a very superficial part. But if I want to deepen that trust, then I got to go into mutual purpose. That purpose becomes very important. And after I've got mutual purpose, then it's about the other factors that I mentioned. It's
Mm.
about how do I get people to take my messages, take my communication, and trust it, right? That is about number one, is whatever I'm communicating accurate. Do I back it up with good amount of references? This could be quotes, case studies, statistics, data, sources. Can I support what I'm saying with a good amount of references? I think that becomes quite important. Uh, Once I've got the trust factor sorted out, I've got the references factor settled out, the evidence part settled out. Um, am I reliable? Am I dependable?
Mm.
Do I show interest in listening to you? Am I interested in a two-way conversation? Am I taking your perspective into account? Am I willing to see things from a different angle when you share with me? All of this leads to trust, and then there's consistency. You know,
Oh, there's
uh,
like so many questions running in the mind, at a time.
yeah, so many, so many. And then there's a consistency part, right? Because if you're not consistent, I don't trust you, right? But if you're consistently not consistent, I can trust you to be not consistent. Then that's a different type of trust altogether, right? But the credibility part really, really comes from, I think, number one, setting a mutual purpose, telling your audience, your stakeholders that you understand them and you can relate to them, and you're speaking from their point of view, addressing their concerns, needs, and
Mm.
interests. It comes from being accurate, where they know that you are somebody who facts checks your work. You put across ideas, thoughts that are well researched, that are well supported, well validated. So that's important. That you're someone who's reliable, and you're somebody who ultimately brings to the table that whole element of consistency. That you're somebody who's not saying this just today, but tomorrow you'll also be saying the same thing. Especially if you're in leadership roles, it becomes very important as leaders. You're somebody who's seen to be reliable, dependable, and consistent. Because if today you tell me I can do something and tomorrow you change your mind and you're going to throw me under the bus, I can trust you. I will not want to work for you, right? So consistency becomes very important. So these are a few factors that I think ultimately establishes credibility, right? And being able to respond to people's
Yeah, yeah.
queries and
I guess it
questions.
really leads down to like a leadership, kind of. I mean, it's kind of like a very closely linked together with regards to. I mean, you can be a good leader, but I guess if you can't communicate well, you won't be considered as a leader already, right? I guess.
Yeah, very hard, right? Because as a poor communicator, it's very hard to influence people, very hard to persuade people. So I think in leadership, and I'm talking about leadership in every aspect, whether it's organizational leadership, whether it's social leadership, whether it's community leadership, whether it's team leadership, whether it's peer leadership, whether it's personal leadership. Leadership in every aspect, I think, requires the highest level of commitment to ensuring uh, confident, credible, and clear communication is very important.
Okay, but I guess it's like whatever the system that you have set up in helping others to improve on their communication skill. I guess everybody comes in all forms, shapes, kind of problems they are having. But what exactly are the few or one or two most challenging aspects, either in terms of person or in terms of the kind of problem that someone is having that you face in terms as a communication trainer kind of thing. Yeah.
I think the most common thing that I come across is people's internal blocks and barriers towards communication. There are a lot of false beliefs that have been ingrained into people's minds that I think we spend a lot of time undoing just by just by opening up those little knots in people's uh, 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 internal mindsets can unlock an entire realm of possibility when it comes to uh, shaping the kind of communicators that they can become. I give you an example. There's this whole thing about introversion and extroversion, right? Where people who are introverted tend to believe I'm an introvert and therefore I cannot communicate well. I'm not a good communicator. And that's the furthest from the truth, right? In fact, some of the best communicators that I have come across are massive introverts, right? Because
Yeah,
there's
I
such a
used to feel it that way as well, man.
yeah. I mean, I'm still an introvert, and I grew up believing that until somebody changed my mind. That the biggest gift you have as an introvert is the ability to listen and to introspect and reflect, and that adds so much of value in a conversation or in a presentation or in an engagement with your stakeholders. Because when you have the ability to practice active listening and demonstrate active listening, there's so much that happens over there. Number one, you respond to intentions rather than words. Number two, you are able to get to the root and the heart of what the other person is trying to tell you. Number three, you're demonstrating respect to the other person, which makes them want to talk to you even more. So there's so much that goes on, and there's so many reasons why introverts make such amazing communicators. So we got to help people get past that. The other one is this whole idea of formal versus informal communication, right? So every time we teach presentation skills, for example, we teach public speaking skills in the workplace or storytelling in the workplace, this whole idea of, oh, I got to be formal, and usually being formal means, or how it translates into is people being very mechanical, very robotic. It just strips them of their entire personality. The same person, if you talk to them over tea break, they are the funniest. They are the most lively. They're such a wonderful personality to be around. But the moment they get into that mode of being formal,
Formal, yeah.
suddenly they drop everything, they lose everything, they become this very robotic, mechanical person. And they speak a language that you don't even recognize anymore. That, no, we don't speak like that, right? But they go into that mode. So we have to help them move past the whole idea of formal and informal and get them to work towards effective versus ineffective communication, right? And I think that's another untangling that we need to do. The third most common one that I come across is this whole idea of um, oh, it cannot be done. It is not possible. And you ask them, why is it not possible? Have you gotten that as a feedback? Oh, no. Have your bosses said that? No. Is that in your organizational SOPs that it cannot be done? No. So why? Oh, because nobody else does it. Right? So nobody else does it. Because nobody else does it, it cannot be done. Right? And sometimes it's a matter of nobody else does it because nobody has ever tried doing it. And if you try doing something, it may just be well received. You don't know, right?
This
So
is very
sometimes,
stereotype in a sense. Yeah, I guess.
yeah, it can be a stereotype, it could be a legacy issue, it can be a heritage issue, it can be just the organizational culture issue. I mean, we respect that there's certain norms and mores of organizations, and you work within those. But sometimes things just don't happen because nobody talked about it. And sometimes, if
Mm,
you have a discussion around it, you may realize that actually your stakeholders are quite open to it. And I think that's an important thing to discuss, to talk to people and say, hey, do you mind if I try this approach at my next presentation? Or do you mind the next meeting we try to take this new format that I have discovered or I want to
mm,
try out in this discussion? And you may just find people saying, hey, that sounds like a good idea. Let's give it a shot. You never know, right? So there are a lot of these internal blocks
mm.
that we need to undo so that we open up that possibility of people changing or evolving the way that they communicate. Like I said, communication is a habit. You need to
Yeah, yeah,
undo a lot of things so they can create room to do new things in new ways.
yeah. I think. I mean, when you are sharing, as you are sharing, it really sounds to me like there's really a lot on your on a personal level on how you really undo your mental blocks or the habits or thoughts that you have in the past that, oh, it's like that, or this like that, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. So yeah, I guess it's really trying to undo those things.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, it's the whole Japanese concept, right? Before you want to pour new tea in, you have to empty the cup first. Right? You don't empty the cup, there's no way you're going to fill the new cup. So I think a lot of our work as trainers, as coaches, is about
Mm,
understanding the room when we go in, understanding the participants, understanding what are the blocks that they have, addressing those blocks first, so that we get
mm,
to open that up towards receiving new ideas, new ways of doing things,
understand,
new ways of
understand.
communicating, and that requires us to be a bit in tune to them,
Mm,
observe them very closely, and try to find those patterns, those areas
mm.
that we need to untangle for them.
Okay. I think that's why you guys really comes in these aspects to really undoing, understanding which what these individuals problems is facing, and then really kind of like customized to individuals on their issues targeting, and then knowing like what are the systems or things that you know well that will definitely help them in their aspects of problems they are facing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man.
You-
Hey, so Rahul, can you share, a little bit on like a storytelling portion? I think that that's the story. I mean, like, I guess a lot of times people heard about this storytelling thing about like, in their speech or this kind of thing, but maybe share a little bit on your own perspective on this storytelling portion of it in a speech for anyone else. Yeah.
yeah. So um, I truly believe that when you talk about communications as a whole, there's so many moving parts to it, and there's so many different components. It's such a broad topic. But
Mm,
within that topic, if there's one thing that I think encapsulates a lot of communication psychology, communication tools, techniques, frameworks, and if you can
mm,
bring it all together, the most powerful mode or format that you're going to come across is the format of storytelling. I think
mm,
it's such a critical driver of messaging in our world today. If you look all around us, there's stories everywhere. From social media to advertisements to marketing campaigns to
mm,
education to learning to conversations with people. I think there's
mm,
so many stories all around, and these stories go to a great length and distance in influencing every aspect of our life, our professions, our careers, our vocations, our
mm,
own personal values, beliefs, principles, attitudes. There's so much that stories influence and contribute to, and I think it is that one thread that weaves all the fabric together, right? If you look at a society, it's essentially an evolution of stories that are being passed down from through time, right? And that's how we have evolved from one generation to the next generation. It's through stories. That's how culture is
mm.
transferred, values are transferred, principles are transferred, history is storytelling, and that's why we learn so much from history. There's so
Yeah.
much that stories can do.
So the
In the work,
story doesn't really has to be related to you, right? I mean,
it
it
does
can
not
be
have to
like
be related
it
to
can
you.
be anything that is like.
It can be anything, right? So if I were to go into a specific context of workplace storytelling, 20 years ago, people would say, "Oh, you're crazy. Nobody does the stories in the workplace." We don't do once upon a time in the workplace. But
Mhm,
today, it's one of the most in-demand topics that come to me at least, right? And the great thing is, there's so many forms of stories people don't even realize. When you give somebody a case study, it's a story. When you quote someone and say, "Hey, just the other day I was talking to somebody in the elevator, and this is what this person said," that's a story, right? When you are recollecting a past or recent incident, that's a story.
mm,
When you are making a reference to a newspaper clipping and drawing some interpretation from there, you are basically telling a story. So there's so many different forms of story. The personal stories, there are third-party stories, there are
mm,
anecdotes, there are analogies, there are metaphors. So there are stories at different levels. And each of these, the most interesting part about a story is this: what makes stories so powerful is that stories engages a person. A well-told story engages a person sensorially,
mm,
experientially, and all three levels of critical thinking, whether it's at the head level, the heart level, or the gut level. It engages you psychologically, emotionally, and physiologically. So it's able to drive uh, rational responses, or psychological responses. It helps you to drive emotional responses. It helps you to drive behavioral responses. So it's such a powerful tool because it engages you at all three levels and derives responses at all three levels. It is a tool that is well placed to influence anybody in your immediate environment or circle if you
mm,
introduce the right form of storytelling. Now, of course, this is a very short conversation, and so I'm going to share this in a nutshell. The starting point of understanding a story and the impact of storytelling is to first extract the principles of storytelling. What are different components
mm,
of storytelling? There are certain things that stories must comprise of. I'm very quickly going to share that. Number one, there must
mm,
be a very clear anchor point or a subject or a character. Right? It's absolutely important that we have a clear character. So this
mm,
character does not have to be a person. This character can be an incident. This character can be an idea. It can be a product. It can be a solution. It can be a problem. But this
mm,
this subject becomes a central part of the story. It's your hook, because as if people are well connected with this, they are able to relate and resonate to this key subject, this focal point. That as you progress through the story with this focal point, people tag along with you. They follow along with you. So that part has become very important. Number two, there's to be very clear context, because context sets meaning. A good story is one that spends a great amount of time in establishing context. All right, in a story, in normal story form, we call this a plot or a setting. Right? If the plot or a setting is well established, well developed, well built, it keeps people engaged. It helps to sustain their interest in that story, because it's about meaning. Context provides meaning. People make sense out of that story because of the context of it. So the
mm.
context becomes also important. The third part is there has to be a problem, a conflict, or a contrast, because this provides drama. All right. And why is drama important? Drama is important because it gives me a reason to stay connected. If there's no drama, it's boring. It's boring at this
Yeah, yeah.
stage, right?
People like drama.
People like drama. In fact, I always say there are only two
Talking
types of
point,
people
talking
in the
point.
world. There are those who watch drama, there are those who create drama. There are just two types of people. So people are so used to drama in their life, we are naturally drawn towards drama. So there has to be something. If there's no
Mm,
problem to be solved, if there's no conflict to be resolved, there's nothing contrasting to be bought into, then why am I even a part of this? What am I doing here? So in order to
mm,
give people a reason to stay connected to the story, there has to be some conflict, drama, problem, uh,
mm,
contrast that has to come into place. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing that needs to happen is motion. You got to know how to keep that story moving along, because you stagnate at certain points for too long, what's going to happen is emotions start to fizzle. Now every incident, every happening, every event in a story is going to trigger a new emotion. When the
mm,
incident is first mentioned, or brought to the connection of the audience or stakeholder, that emotion is at the most intense. If you continue to linger on that part for too long, the emotion regarding it starts to fizzle. So attention starts to depreciate along with that intensity of the emotion. So if I want my audience to remain engaged, remain attentive, I need to keep that story moving along at the right pace, at the right interval, at the right juncture, so that I don't share too little, I also don't share too much to lead to a disconnect or become a bore, right? So you
mm,
gotta have motion, because motion creates emotion. Emotion leads to people relating to that story in a certain manner, right? So that becomes very important. So you got emotion. The fifth part that becomes very important now is specificity. Great stories have a lot of specificity, whether it's in terms of nouns, adjectives, verbs, right? Date, time, places, names, right? So there's a lot of specificity. The more specific we are, the more points of connectivity we are giving to the audience. If I tell you today that I went to this beautiful island for a holiday the last weekend, okay, maybe it's something. If you're an island person, beach person, that might already relate to you. But if I tell you I went to Bali the last weekend, if I tell you I went to Bintan the last weekend, if you've been to Bintan before, you've been to Bali before, you instantly connect with the idea of Bintan and Bali. You start recollecting the places that you have been to. You start thinking about the food that you have eaten, the scents that you have smelled. So it starts engaging you immediately because I've gave you one very strong point of connection. And the more such specificity I give you, names of restaurants, places, beaches, people that I met, right? The more points of connectivity I give you, the more you feel like you
Well,
are a part of that story, right? So that specificity is
so it
important.
just give people the opportunities to be able to touch on things to just continue keeping the conversation going. Yeah, yeah.
Keeping the
Okay.
conversation going. And the last part then is the resolution, the conclusion part. You can't keep people hanging for too long. This is not like the Avatar movie, yeah, where one Avatar movie comes 10 years ago, the next one comes 10 years later, people wait for it. Real life, it doesn't happen, right? So you got to give them instant gratification. You got to give them instant resolution, instant conclusion. You got to give them a closure by the end of the story. So the conclusion part also becomes very important. So these are six main things that I think draw the principles of stories, and take these six things and put it into anything that you do, your emails, your reports, your conversations, your presentations, and you're going to find that you are suddenly becoming a lot more engaging and a lot more effective as a storyteller, as a communicator, because there's so much more clarity that comes into play.
Wow, wow, Rahul, I must say that this short time you really share very juicy and very good stuff today tonight, man. So yeah, really, really, really great sharing. Really great sharing. Yeah.
No, thank you. I really hope that people watching this benefit from it and they're able to take some of
Yeah,
this
yeah.
and apply.
I mean, the video is going to be shared. I guess anybody who comes across this video, understands exactly how's your approach wise. I mean, yeah, I guess anyone who come across anybody who is interested to find out more with regards to like what Rahul is doing. I mean, he does workshops, corporates, or also can do like small groups or individuals kind of a coaching in terms of improving your communication, your leadership skills, all this stuff, right? If you want to connect to him, just reach out to me. I would be happy to connect Rahul to you guys, and he will be glad to discuss with you guys and see how he can conduct his workshops at your company or small groups, whichever the case is. Yeah. So yep, great. So Rahul, thanks again. Is there like any kind of things that you would like to do a shout out, to the audience about the work that you're doing, before we say goodnight to everyone?
Sure. I really believe that the biggest impact that we make as communicators is to ourselves, because a lot of times when we talk about communication, we talk about external
Mm,
communication, how we communicate to other people, but we forget that the first stakeholder that we have is ourselves, right? And what we say to ourselves, how we communicate to ourselves, confidently, credibly, with clarity, with optimism, with positivity is equally important, because that shapes us in terms of how it guides our decision making, how it guides our approach, how it guides our perception towards things. So we need to start having more positive conversations with ourselves so that we can start having more positive conversations with other people. So I would say that as a last point, remember, be communicating positively, impactfully, effectively with yourself first.
wow.
Very
Great,
important.
great works. Great words from Ahu. Yeah. Okay. So thanks again, and thanks to those who come to hear what Rahul has to say. The video will be shared, and whoever's keen to link up with Rahul, just reach out to me. Okay. And that's all. I think Rahul, I know that you have not had your dinner, so better go and have your dinner soon, and I will catch up with you soon.
Sure. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Ping.
All
Look
right.
forward.
And good night to everyone. Thanks a lot again. Bye.
Right.